Hey, my dear friend, yes, it's you. Tonight, let's set aside all those heavy, troubling thoughts for a while. We won't be talking about the wars and regime changes endlessly repeated in history textbooks, nor will we analyze those dry dates and heroic achievements. Tonight, I want to share with you some stories that have been quietly covered by the dust of history, yet sparkle with a strange light. The protagonists of our story are a group of women you may have never heard of. They were true pioneers, the women who, behind the scenes, quietly built their own business empires in the coarse, chaotic Wild West. Yes, I'm talking about the women known as madams. They were shrewd businesswomen who cleverly transformed what the world considered the most contemptible, sin, into astonishing wealth and power. Oh, and by the way, if you enjoy listening to these forgotten legends in the quiet of the night, feel free to give me a gentle like or subscribe. I'm always incredibly curious about you, the person listening to all this. Where are you right now? A bustling city or a peaceful village? Outside your window, is it the faint glow before dawn or the stars of a deep night? Please, tell me your location and the current time in the comments. Whenever I think about my voice traveling across mountains and oceans, accompanying different people around the world as they slowly drift off to sleep, I always get an indescribable, magical feeling. Alright now, find your most comfortable position. Perhaps you're curled up in a soft blanket, or maybe you're sinking into a cozy armchair. Now, follow me. Take a slow, deep breath. Inhale, feel the cool air fill your lungs, and then slowly, completely exhale, letting all the fatigue and tension in your body dissipate with that breath. Very good, one more time. Now, just let your entire body, without reservation, surrender its full weight to the mattress, the sofa, or whatever you are lying on. We are about to depart, heading back to that era of dust, liquor, and opportunity, the 1870s, back to the land known as the American frontier. Trust me, by the time tonight's story is over, you will feel an unprecedented sense of gratitude for the soft, comfortable mattress beneath you. So, congratulations. You've opened your eyes in a daze, finding yourself in a cramped, tiny room on the second floor of a Wild West saloon. The year is 1878, on a certain morning. The first thing to pull you from your slumber is the smell. It's a complex, overwhelmingly invasive blend of odors that seeps into your nostrils. First, of course, is the lingering scent of sweat and body odor, which, in an era lacking proper sanitation, is practically the baseline of the air. But that's far from all. Your sense of smell, like a clumsy detective, tries to parse the chaotic mixture. The pot-bellied stove in the corner emits the smoky scent of burnt-out embers, carrying a dry warmth. A cloyingly sweet, cheap perfume hangs in the air, a futile attempt to mask all the other, less pleasant smells, only succeeding in making the concoction even stranger. And at the very bottom, the most stubborn layer, is the lingering ghost of last night's revelry, a scent that seems to have soaked into every inch of the rough wooden floorboards, the alcoholic tang of whiskey, the acrid bite of tobacco, and a faint, sour hint of vomit. Your nose wrinkles involuntarily as you catch another layer. It's the smell of horses, wafting up from the street below. A potent mix of fresh manure, dry dust, and the sweat of the animals themselves. This aroma brazenly pushes through the thin cotton curtains that barely cover the window, invading your room. The curtains might have once been floral, but now they are faded yellow, covered in a thick layer of grime. Next to besiege you is sound. Somewhere downstairs, someone is tuning a piano. The plinking notes are repeated and adjusted, over and over, sometimes harmonious, sometimes jarring, like a half-asleep person mumbling to themselves. Outside, the wheels of a heavy wagon clatter over the dusty, uneven street, the sound of kerlunk, kerlunk echoing as the wheels dip into ruts, causing the whole wooden building to tremble slightly. You can hear the shouts and conversations of people on the street, a peculiar linguistic medley of heavily accented English, rapid-fire Spanish, and even a few harsh-sounding words that sound like German. Amidst this cacophony, a woman's laugh suddenly cuts through the air. It's sharp and loud, delivered with a kind of practiced skill, as if it were a professional signal. You shift your body and finally become aware that you are lying on a narrow iron frame bed. The mattress beneath you is less a mattress and more a large sack stuffed with lumpy horsehair. It feels like there are 1,000 hard bumps inside, each one pressing precisely into the most uncomfortable parts of your body. Covering you is a faded red wool blanket, pocked with small holes from cigarette burns and worn thin patches. It might have been considered fancy once, but now it offers only a scratchy texture and a musty smell. Yes, there are no sheets. Sheets are a luxury for high-class establishments, and this, clearly, is not one of them. Beside the bed sits a chipped ceramic wash basin. The water in it is from last night, now lukewarm and slightly murky. Next to it lies a small, harsh sliver of lye soap, the kind that would strip your skin dry. You glance around. The room is pitifully small. Besides your bed, there is only enough space for a wobbly three-legged table holding a kerosene lamp with a blackened chimney, and a battered old wooden trunk resting quietly in the corner. Inside that trunk is every worldly possession its owner has. The walls? Oh, the walls are as thin as paper. You can clearly hear the thunderous snoring from the next room, along with some muffled sleep-talking. On a nail by the door hangs a faded calico dress, and beneath it, a pair of heavily worn leather boots. Welcome to 1878. This is the life of a soiled dove in a western mining town. But here's the good news for you, you are not one of the working girls. And the bad news? You are the madam who runs this place. That's right, you are Catherine. Have you ever considered this question? In the American West of the 1870s and 1880s, for a woman who wanted to achieve independent wealth, free from the control of any man, there was virtually only one path. What was it? The answer is, to become a madam. Let's imagine the environment back then. It was an era where women's rights were suppressed to the extreme. Women had no right to vote, their voices were completely absent in the political sphere. The vast majority of respectable jobs, doctor, lawyer, merchant, were closed to them. Want to get a business loan from a bank? It was simply laughable. The bankers would look at you as if you were insane. In most places, if a woman wanted to own a piece of land or a property, the deed had to have a man's name on it, be it her father, her husband, or her brother. Economically and legally, they were like appendages to men. And yet, within these suffocating social rules, women like you, the so-called madams, keenly found a loophole, a crack where they could breathe and even build their own world. They were the most unsung female entrepreneurs of their time. You slowly swing your legs over the side of the bed, and a simple movement sends a groan of complaint through all your muscles. Running a brothel is not a restful job. Last night, you were busy until the early hours of the morning, making sure the drunk miners and cowboys behaved, that every transaction was completed without a single cent missing, and that none of your girls were mistreated by customers, while also ensuring they didn't hold back your rightful cut. A faint, rhythmic throbbing starts at your temples, a souvenir from the 2 glasses of whiskey you allowed yourself while entertaining customers. Drinking with clients is part of the business. It makes them lower their guard and spend more freely. The price is a splitting headache the next morning. As you stand up, your bare feet meet the rough, unfriendly texture of the wooden planks. These floors probably haven't been properly scrubbed in years. There are even large gaps between some of the boards, and if you were to bend down, you could likely peek into the saloon below. Splinters are a daily hazard to be wary of. You fumble for a worn cotton wrapper to throw over your chemise before heading to the wash basin. The water is now bitingly cold, but you scoop some up anyway, splashing it vigorously onto your face, trying to use the shock to chase away the lingering fog of sleep and the dullness of the hangover. There is no mirror here. Mirrors are expensive consumables. In a place frequented by drunken cowboys and miners, they are too easily broken. But what does it matter if there's no mirror? After all these years, you can see your face by feel anyway. You can feel the fine lines at the corners of your eyes that weren't there 5 years ago, a delicate web that records the passage of time and countless sleepless nights. You can feel the set of your mouth, which has grown harder over time, a look you've deliberately practiced to maintain dignity and deter trouble, which has now become a part of your muscle memory. You are 35 years old now, and you've been running this place for nearly 7 years. Your establishment, this place you've poured your sweat and nerve into for the better part of a decade, is neither the most opulent brothel in this dusty town, nor is it the most squalid. It occupies a precarious middle ground, a testament to your own pragmatism. You currently have 6 young women working for you. 3 of them sleep in rooms just like this one, lining this narrow, creaking hallway. The other 3 reside in a small, rough-hewn building out back, a slightly more private but no less humble annex to your burgeoning enterprise. You know, most of the madams in this town, and indeed across the West, began their careers as working girls themselves. It was the most common path, a promotion of sorts. Some, even after becoming proprietresses, still entertain special clients on the side, perhaps the wealthiest men in town, or those who hold political power, men who might prove useful in a pinch. But that's not your way. Not anymore. You figured out a long time ago, with a clarity that felt like a lightning strike, that the real, sustainable fortune wasn't in selling your own company, but in shrewdly, meticulously, taking a percentage from the company of others. It was a shift from being the product to being the producer, a crucial step towards true independence. The day's business beckons. You hear the bartender, Thomas, beginning his morning rituals downstairs, the faint clinking of glasses as he readies the saloon for another day of commerce. Time to move. You have a long list of tasks that demand your attention, supplies to order, the sheriff's weekly donation to prepare for, and a new girl, you recall, is scheduled to arrive on the afternoon stagecoach, a fresh face who will need to be taught the intricate rules of this game. You reach for your day clothes, pulling on a durable, dark blue skirt and a simple white shirtwaist. These are your working clothes, practical and unpretentious, suitable for haggling with suppliers and keeping accounts. The performance, the transformation, will come later, as dusk begins to settle. In the evening, you will change into something far more impressive, a costume designed to project success and command respect. Perhaps a dress of rich velvet, or, if the previous weeks have been particularly profitable, shimmering silk. You've learned that being a successful madam is as much about perception as it is about profit. Appearances are everything in this business. Your customers expect a certain level of grandeur from the woman in charge, it reassures them that they are in a high-class establishment, worthy of their coin. Have you ever wondered how these women, in an era of such rigid social constraints, managed to build their brands? They were masters of public relations, long before the term was ever invented. The truly legendary madams, women like Maddie Silks or Jenny Rogers in Denver, understood this principle intimately. They knew precisely how to leverage their appearance to project an aura of immense success. They wore the most fashionable gowns, adorned themselves with glittering jewelry, diamonds, pearls, gold, and made absolutely certain that everyone in town, from the mayor to the stable boy, knew they were thriving. It's a fundamental business principle, isn't it? If you look successful, you attract a better clientele, and a better clientele means you can charge higher prices. It's simple economics, but applied with a distinctly feminine, and audacious, twist. Speaking of the formidable Maddie Silks, a story often circulates among the women in your profession, a tale told with a mixture of awe and professional admiration. When she first made her way to Denver in the 1870s, she didn't just arrive. She made an entrance. She rolled into the burgeoning city with 4 beautiful girls she had personally recruited in Kansas City. But here is where her genius truly shines: she didn't take the direct route. Maddie was far too clever for that. She had ingeniously set up what she wryly called a portable boarding house right inside her large, comfortable coach. Think of it. A mobile enterprise. At every dusty mining camp and fledgling settlement they passed along the long, arduous trail to Colorado, the girls would conduct business. By the time her coach finally rattled into Denver, she and her girls had already earned more than enough capital to establish their new bordello in magnificent style, without needing a single loan or investor. Now, that is the kind of entrepreneurial thinking that separated the legends from the legions of forgotten women who failed. They didn't just see the hardship of the journey, they saw a chain of untapped markets, an opportunity for profit where others saw only dust and desolation. You pull on your boots, tightening the laces and wincing as the stiff leather presses against a blister you earned yesterday. Truly comfortable footwear is a luxury you cannot afford, at least not during business hours. The dainty boots that are currently in fashion, with their pointed toes and 2-inch heels, are instruments of torture on your feet after a long night, but they are an indispensable part of the uniform. They signal femininity and status. At least, you think with a sigh of relief, you don't have to don the corset just yet. That particular device of torment can wait until the sun begins to set. As you finish dressing, your mind, as it always does, turns to the accounts. Last night was a good night, highly profitable. A payday at the local mines always translates into a flood of free-spending customers, eager to wash away the grit and grime of their labor with whiskey and women. You are your own bookkeeper, trusting no one else with the true figures of your operation. In the bottom drawer of your battered desk, hidden beneath a cleverly designed false panel, sits your real ledger. It's a handsome, leather-bound book, and within its pages, every single transaction, every dollar earned, is meticulously recorded in your neat, precise script. Another, much slimmer book sits in plain sight on the desktop. This is the one you would present if some overzealous, do-gooder lawman ever came sniffing around with questions. The numbers in that ledger are considerably, laughably, smaller. The most successful madams were, without exception, brilliant with money. They had to be. Their survival and prosperity depended on it. Take Jenny Rogers, the undisputed queen of the Denver brothel scene. She didn't just spend her earnings on silks and diamonds. No, She invested her profits from the House of Mirrors into the city's burgeoning infrastructure, specifically its irrigation and reservoir systems. It was a savvy, forward-thinking move that earned her a tidy profit on top of her already substantial income. And Maddie Silks. She funneled her money into real estate, buying up properties all over Denver. By the time she finally decided to retire, she was one of the city's major landowners, owning nearly half a block of what had become prime downtown property. These women weren't just running brothels, they were building empires, one transaction, one clever investment at a time. The system you run is fairly standard. A girl might charge a customer $5 for her company for a short time. That initial $5 would cover her room and board at your establishment for the night. Any money she earned beyond that baseline amount was hers to keep, to spend on prettier clothes, medicine, or, if she was disciplined, to save for a future beyond this life. However, not all madams operated with such, shall we say, generosity. Some ran a much tighter ship. If a girl failed to meet a certain minimum earning for the week, she could find herself unceremoniously thrown out onto the street. It was a brutal calculus, but for many, business was simply business. You flatter yourself that you aren't quite so harsh. You understand that everyone has an off night, or times when they are feeling unwell. But sentimentality has its limits. You still take a clean 50% of everything your girls earn. In exchange for that hefty commission, you provide them with a roof over their heads, 3 meals a day, a degree of protection from the more dangerous clientele, and, most importantly, a steady stream of established customers. It is a business arrangement, clear and simple. But beyond the direct exchange of services for money, there was the real engine of your profit, alcohol. Copious amounts of it. The whiskey was often watered down, and all of it was marked up by as much as 60%. That, right there, was where the river of gold truly flowed. The core strategy was simple: get the customers drinking. And then, get them to buy drinks for the girls. The drinks the girls received, of course, were usually nothing more than colored water or weak tea in a whiskey glass, a harmless deception that kept them sober and sharp while the customer's wallet grew looser with every real shot he consumed. And oh, how the profits rolled in from that simple trick. Some of the girls who worked primarily in the saloon earned a commission on the drinks they encouraged the men to buy, but more often than not, that money went right back to you, the madam, to pay off the debts they incurred for the fancy clothes or other necessities you provided them on credit. It was a beautifully self-sustaining system, designed to keep the money flowing in one direction, yours. You make your way towards the narrow, steep staircase, each step you take creaking loudly in the morning quiet, a familiar sound that announces your descent. It's a sound of authority, a signal to anyone below that the day's true manager is now on the move. The saloon is peaceful at this early hour, a stark contrast to the boisterous chaos of the night. The only person present is Thomas, your bartender, a man of few words but unwavering reliability. He is methodically wiping down the already spotless surface of the long bar top with a rag that has, admittedly, seen better days. The air down here is thicker, still heavy with the ghosts of last night's laughter and arguments, the lingering scent of stale beer and tobacco clinging stubbornly to the air. He sees you approaching and gives a respectful nod. He knows precisely who signs his pay vouchers, and more than that, he knows you run a tight ship that keeps him in steady employment. "Morning, Miss Catherine," he says, his voice a low rumble. He uses the formal name you adopted for all your business dealings years ago. Your real name, the one you were born with, has become a relic of a past life, a secret you guard closely. It hasn't passed your lips in years. Most madams, you know, operated under assumed names. It was a shield, a necessary layer of protection in a world where your past could always be used against you. "Morning, Thomas," you reply, your eyes sweeping the room, performing a quick, practiced assessment for any signs of damage from the previous night's festivities. "Any trouble after I turned in?" "Nothing worth mentioning, ma'am. Had to escort a very drunk Mr. Wilson home again," Thomas reports. "The man can't hold his liquor worth a damn." You nod, making a quiet mental note. Perhaps a discreet, anonymous word to Mr. Wilson's wife might be in order, a suggestion that she might want to keep a closer eye on her husband's evening whereabouts. Not that you would ever actually say anything directly, of course. Discretion is another cornerstone of your business, a valuable commodity you trade in daily. But it is always good to keep track of which customers are prone to becoming problems. Information is power. Your saloon itself is a fairly typical example for a mining town of this size. A long, imposing wooden bar runs along one wall, its surface a roadmap of the establishment's history, scarred with the rings of countless glasses and bottles, nicks from dropped coins, and even a few deeper gouges from the occasional, carelessly brandished knife. A dozen small, round tables are scattered across the floor, each accompanied by a collection of mismatched chairs that you've acquired over the years. At the far end of the room, a small, raised platform serves as a stage, just big enough for the piano and its player, and on the rare occasion you can find a singer who won't try to rob you blind, a vocalist. The walls are adorned with faded prints of racehorses and dramatic hunting scenes, likely torn from popular Eastern magazines and tacked up to add a touch of class. And, of course, there's the large, cracked mirror behind the bar. It's your establishment's grandest feature, making the room seem twice its actual size, though the crack running down its center splinters every reflection into a fractured, slightly distorted version of reality. It's a far cry from the legendary House of Mirrors in Denver, with its magnificent, ceiling-to-floor looking glasses and plush velvet furniture, but it serves its purpose. The men who come here, you know, are hardly coming for the decor. A sharp, sudden knock at the back door pulls you from your survey. It's too early for any customers to be calling. It must be the supply wagon, you surmise, with the weekly delivery of whiskey and beer. "I'll get it," you tell Thomas, heading toward the storeroom at the rear of the building. But as you unlatch the heavy door, you find it isn't the supply wagon at all. Instead, you find yourself standing face to face with Sheriff Mills. His expression is grim, almost severe, beneath the thick brush of his mustache, and your heart gives a little lurch, sinking in your chest. This cannot be good news. "Morning, Catherine," he says, his voice low. He removes his hat, a small gesture of politeness that you note with faint relief. At least he's being civil. That's something. "Sheriff," you greet him, keeping your own voice even, betraying none of the unease you feel. "What brings you by so early? Our usual arrangement isn't due for discussion until Friday." The arrangement, of course, is the polite term for the monthly payment you provide him, the cash that ensures the sheriff and his deputies consistently find more important things to do than raid your establishment. It's the cost of doing business. "It's not about that," he says, his eyes avoiding yours for a moment. "There's been some trouble over at Lily's place." Lily. She ran a smaller, less refined brothel on the edge of town, one that catered mostly to the miners who couldn't afford your prices. A knot of apprehension tightens in your stomach. What kind of trouble, you ask, though you already have a sinking feeling you know the answer. The sheriff finally meets your gaze, and his is flat, devoid of emotion. She's dead. Stabbed. One of her girls, too. A profound chill, cold and sharp, runs through you, a cold that has nothing to do with the morning air. This business has always been shadowed by danger, you know that better than anyone. But murder? Even in a rough-and-tumble town like this, that was not common. It represents a different level of threat, a line that has been crossed. Do they have any idea who did it, you ask, your voice a little hoarse. The sheriff shakes his head slowly. Working on it. Just thought you should know. Might want to be extra careful for a while. You give a curt nod, your mind already racing, shifting from shock to strategic planning. The implications are cascading through your thoughts. You'll need to hire an extra man for security, at least for a few weeks. You'll have to warn the girls to be especially watchful, to trust no one. And maybe you'll need to raise your prices temporarily to cover the additional expense. Survival always comes at a cost. Thanks for letting me know, you say, your voice regaining its composure. You reach into the pocket of your skirt and pull out a silver dollar, its surface cool against your palm. You press it into his hand. It's not a bribe, not exactly. It's a token of appreciation for the warning, a small investment in maintaining a flow of information. It's the oil that greases the gears of this town's delicate, unofficial power structure. The sheriff pockets the coin without comment, a seamless, practiced motion. He settles his hat back on his head. Take care, Catherine. After he leaves, you lean against the heavy door frame for a long moment, the cool wood a steadying presence against your back. You let the stark reality of the news sink in. Lily is dead. You didn't know her well, of course. In this business, competition naturally keeps a certain distance. But she had been a fixture in this town for years, a part of its ecosystem, just like you. Her murder is a brutal, terrifying reminder of the utterly precarious position you occupy. For all the money you've managed to accumulate, for all your business acumen and meticulous planning, you are still, in the end, just a madam. A woman running a business in a town that tolerates your existence but would not shed a single tear at your passing. Isn't it a strange paradox? This is the reality that women like Maddie Silks, Jenny Rogers, and countless others whose names have been lost to history faced every single day. They built empires from the raw materials of male desire and loneliness. They amassed fortunes in a world where other women couldn't even find respectable jobs. And yet, they always existed on the very edge of a cliff, on the brink of disaster. One enraged customer, one jealous competitor, one sudden moral crusade launched by the town's respectable folk, and everything they had painstakingly built could vanish overnight. And yet, they persisted. They expanded their businesses, they paid off local politicians, they donated to charities, and they added layers of legitimacy to their trade however they could. Maddie Silks, you recall, managed to acquire a liquor license in 1885, a feat nearly unheard of for a woman-owned business at the time. You push yourself off the doorframe, straightening your back and lifting your chin. There is no time for dwelling on what might happen. There is business to attend to. Lily's fate is a warning, not a prophecy. And you, Catherine, are a survivor. You push the dark thoughts of Lily's demise to a closely guarded corner of your mind. There will be time to dissect the fear and the implications later, in the quiet solitude of the night. For now, the machinery of your business requires its operator. You settle yourself at the small, sturdy desk you keep in the corner of the saloon, the nerve center of your operations, and begin to review last night's receipts. The numbers, you note with a flicker of satisfaction, are good. Very good. Another month like this one, and you can finally afford to replace the cracked window pane in the upstairs hallway and perhaps even acquire that newer, more handsome piano you've been eyeing. Music, you know, is an investment. Good music brings in more customers, keeps them drinking longer, and more customers bring in more money. The economics of running a brothel in the Wild West were, on the surface, quite straightforward, but they demanded ceaseless, careful management. Alcohol sales provided the steady, reliable baseline of your income. The more specialized services offered upstairs brought in larger, more substantial sums, but this income was, by its nature, more irregular. Rooms could be rented by the hour or for the entire night, the price fluctuating based on the customer's needs and the perceived depth of his wallet. Everything, absolutely everything, had its price, a price that was clearly established and, once stated, entirely non-negotiable. This was a business, not a charity. As you methodically tally the figures in your ledger, the faint scent of baking bread begins to permeate the saloon, a warm, wholesome aroma that momentarily overpowers the lingering odor of stale beer and tobacco. The front door opens, letting in a shaft of bright morning sunlight that illuminates the dancing dust motes in the air. One of your girls, Sadie, enters, her cheeks flushed from the morning air. She's carrying a large basket filled with fresh, golden brown loaves from the bakery down the street. "Morning," she calls out, her voice bright and cheerful. At 22, Sadie still possesses an energy and a buoyant optimism that you sometimes, in your quieter moments, find yourself envying. She hasn't been in this business long enough for the relentless realities of it to wear her down, to chip away at her spirit. "Morning," you reply, your voice softer than you intended. "Any news from town?" Sadie sets the heavy basket on the bar and begins to unpack the loaves, their yeasty fragrance now filling the room. "Well," she begins, her eyes sparkling with the pleasure of being a bearer of news, "Mrs. Peterson at the bakery says her husband's seriously considering a run for mayor. Says the town needs a man who understands business, not another frontiersman politician. You file this information away. A new mayor could mean new arrangements, new fees, a new power dynamic to navigate. And the Marshall boys got into another brawl at the Silver Dollar last night, this time over a card game. Sheriff had to haul them both off. Good to know. The Marshall boys are trouble, and it's best to know when they're on a tear. Oh, and the afternoon stage is running late today. They had some trouble with a wheel outside of Carson City." You nod, making a mental note of the delay. "This means your new girl will be arriving later than expected. That gives you more time to prepare her room and her welcome. Have you ever stopped to think about the true value of information, especially in a place where everyone has a secret? In a frontier town, knowing who is sleeping with whom, who is in debt, who is nursing a grudge, and who is planning their next move is a currency far more valuable than gold. This is another essential, if unstated, service your girls provide. Through their pillow talk and casual conversations, they are your eyes and ears, gathering the intricate web of gossip and intelligence that allows you to navigate the treacherous social and political currents of this town. You let Sadie continue to chatter as she arranges the bread, sharing all the little tidbits she's picked up on her morning errand. Meanwhile, your own mind drifts back to the practicalities of the day ahead. There's the new girl to settle in. A special delivery of what is purported to be genuine French champagne is arriving for your wealthier, more discerning customers. And you must arrange the monthly doctor's visit. You insist on regular health checks for all of your employees, a practice that not every madam bothers with. You see it as a sound business practice. Healthy girls are working girls, and a reputation for cleanliness helps attract a better class of clientele. It's a simple calculation of risk and reward. The life of a Wild West madam, you reflect, was a strange and demanding blend of roles. You were part businesswoman, part mother figure, and part prison warden. You had to manage a dozen different personalities and egos, all while keeping a laser focus on the profits. You settled their petty disputes, you nursed them when they were sick, you fiercely protected them from abusive or violent customers, and through it all, you had to maintain the carefully constructed facade of gentle, welcoming hospitality that kept the money flowing. And despite all that relentless work, despite all that risk, you knew that mainstream society would never acknowledge your contributions or your success. It was the great, unspoken hypocrisy of the West. The very same townsfolk who sought out your establishment under the concealing cloak of darkness would deliberately cross the street to avoid you in the bright light of day. The businessmen who happily took your money for investment opportunities, profiting from your success, would never dream of introducing you to their wives or inviting you to their homes. You and your girls existed in a strange liminal space, a shadow world where you were simultaneously essential to the functioning of the community and yet officially invisible, erased from the respectable narrative of the town. Yet, the irony was not lost on you. The madams of the West were often among the wealthiest and most influential women of their time. They owned property when most women legally couldn't. They ran complex businesses when most women were confined to domestic work. They built fortunes from scratch when most women were entirely financially dependent on their husbands or fathers. They were the quiet, unacknowledged matriarchs of the frontier's hidden economy. The day stretches on, and the saloon slowly begins to come to life around you. Your piano player arrives, his clothes rumpled from whatever corner he slept in last night. More of your girls begin to appear, some bright-eyed and ready for the day, others still battling the lingering effects of last night's work and whiskey. Thomas begins slicing the fresh bread for the simple lunch you offer to the girls: bread, cheese, and, if business has been particularly good, a hearty stew. For a moment, you allow yourself to simply observe the rhythm of your world, a complex, living organism that you have built and sustained through sheer force of will. The fragile moment of peace, woven from the scent of fresh bread and the quiet industry of the morning, is abruptly torn apart. A loud, jarring sound of shattering glass erupts from the second floor, followed instantly by a string of furious, muffled curses. You sigh, a long, weary exhalation of breath. It is a sigh of resignation, not surprise. The life of a madam, you think to yourself, is never allowed to remain quiet for long. It is a constant exercise in managing chaos. "I'll deal with it," you say calmly to Thomas, who has already stopped his work and is looking towards the ceiling with an expression of weary concern. The familiar wooden stairs creak under the weight of your boots as you climb back to the second floor, your posture straight, your expression neutral. The noise came from Rose's room. She's one of your newer girls, barely 20 years old, and possessed of a fiery temper that can flare from a spark to a raging inferno in the blink of an eye. You don't even bother to knock. As the madam, every room in this establishment is ultimately yours to enter as you see fit. It is a necessary assertion of your absolute authority. You push the thin wooden door open. The scene inside is one of minor, yet potent, destruction. Rose is standing in the middle of the small room, her chest heaving, surrounded by the glittering shards of what used to be her porcelain wash basin. Her face is flushed a deep crimson, her eyes bright and wild with a volatile mixture of pure anger and unshed tears. "Want to tell me what that was about?" you ask, your voice deliberately kept low and neutral, devoid of accusation. Over the years, you have learned a crucial lesson in this business: judgment only ever makes a bad situation worse. Your role is not to judge, but to manage, to contain, and to restore order. "Johnny Wilson," he promised, she finally chokes out, her voice cracking with the force of her heartbreak. "He promised he would take me away from here. He said he was saving up, that we were going to buy a little farm, a little place just outside of town." She gestures wildly with her hands. "Then I saw him. This morning. I saw him heading into the stagecoach office with Martha, that mousy little thing from the millinery shop. They had bags with them, Catherine. They had their bags packed and they were laughing." You listen patiently, your expression unchanging. You have heard this story before, so many times. The names change, the specific details of the dream might vary, but the ending is always, invariably, the same. Some lonely customer, desperate for a connection, spins a web of promises for one of the girls. He fills her head with sweet, intoxicating dreams of respectability, of marriage, of escape. And then, he vanishes. Sometimes they just leave town, like Johnny Wilson did. Sometimes, even more cruelly, they show up again on the next payday, drunk and smiling, pretending those life-altering promises were never whispered in the dark. Have you ever felt the sting of a promise, beautifully crafted, that you knew when your heart was destined to break? For these women, that sting was a constant, occupational hazard. "That basin," you say, your voice finally cutting through her sobs, "is coming out of your earnings. It has to be this way. Business is business, and property must be respected." But as you speak the words, your tone is softer, gentler, than the words themselves. You let the hardness of the rule be cushioned by the softness of your delivery. "Now," you continue, "get yourself cleaned up. Then come downstairs for some breakfast. I think I have a new dress that might just fit you. A lovely green silk. It would look beautiful with your hair." It is a small kindness, a seemingly insignificant gesture in the grand scheme of things. But you know that in this world, a world so often devoid of genuine tenderness, small kindnesses are sometimes all a person has to hold on to. They are the threads that can mend a spirit, if only for a little while. Rose looks up, her sobbing quieting to sniffles. She nods, wiping at her tear-streaked eyes with the back of her hand, a childlike gesture that pierces your professional veneer for just a moment. Back downstairs, you find that more of your girls have emerged from their rooms, the domestic rhythm of the morning resuming. Lucy, the oldest of your girls at 29 and your most trusted lieutenant, is helping Thomas slice the fresh bread. Mary and Beth, two sisters who came west together after their parents died in a factory fire back east, are sweeping the floor and rearranging the chairs with practiced efficiency. Before the customers arrive in the evening, everyone has a job to do. They are not just entertainers, they are part of the engine that keeps this place running. This was how the better brothels operated. They functioned like well-managed, if unconventional, households. The women weren't just decorative objects waiting for a customer's pleasure. They were active participants in the upkeep of the establishment. They helped prepare the food, they kept the place clean and orderly, they mended the linens. Some of the most ambitious madams, you know, even insisted their girls learn to read and write, to hold intelligent conversations about current events, to play an instrument. The more accomplished and refined the girls, the higher the prices the establishment could command. The legendary Jenny Rogers was famous for being exceptionally selective about her soiled doves. She chose only the most beautiful, the most graceful, and the most well-mannered young women for her opulent house of mirrors. She clothed them in the finest, most elegant gowns, housed them in luxurious, richly decorated surroundings, and charged astronomical prices for their company. Her establishment became known as one of the finest brothels in the entire West, a destination for wealthy businessmen, powerful politicians, and discerning tourists who desired more than just a quick, sordid transaction. They sought an experience, an illusion of refinement and beauty, and Jenny Rogers was a master at selling that illusion. Your place isn't nearly that fancy, of course, but you have your standards. You have your rules. Your girls are not permitted to work if they are sick or injured. They receive regular medical examinations from a discreet doctor. You do not allow them to drink excessively while they are working, and you keep a very close watch on customers who show any sign of becoming violent. Not every madam was so careful, but you had learned early on that healthy, content employees are, quite simply, good for business. They are your most valuable asset, and you protect your assets. The broken basin was a minor expense. Losing a good girl like Rose to despair would be a far greater loss. Just as a semblance of order has been restored to your small universe, just as Rose has been pacified and the daily chores are underway, another sharp knock sounds, this time at the front door. It is still far too early in the day for regular customers. You exchange a brief, questioning glance with Lucy. She wipes her hands on the simple apron tied around her waist before crossing the room to answer the summons. A moment later, she returns, and trailing just behind her is a young woman who looks as though she has been hollowed out by exhaustion and fear. She looks like she hasn't had a proper night's sleep in days, maybe even weeks. Her dress, you notice immediately, was once of a fine quality, a deep blue serge that speaks of a more prosperous past, but it is now hopelessly travel-stained and crumpled, a testament to a long and difficult journey. She clutches a small, worn carpet bag in her hands, her knuckles white and bloodless from the sheer force of her grip, as if it is the only solid thing she has left in the world. She's looking for work, Lucy explains, her voice soft. Her eyes give the newcomer a quick, sweeping assessment, taking in the worn-out clothes and the desperate posture, a silent, professional appraisal. You rise slowly from your desk, your own expression unreadable. "I'm Catherine," you say, your voice calm and even as you extend your hand. "I run this establishment." The young woman flinches almost imperceptibly at your directness, but she takes your hand. Her handshake is limp and uncertain, her skin cold despite the growing warmth of the day. "Emily," she replies, her voice barely more than a whisper, fragile and hoarse. "Emily Mitchell." "Well, Emily Mitchell," you say, your gaze softening just a fraction, "you look like you could use a hot meal and a proper wash before we discuss anything else. Lucy, show her to the back room. Find her something clean to wear." As Lucy gently leads the nervous young woman away, you watch them go, a familiar set of questions already forming in your mind. What is her story? What calamity has washed her up on your doorstep? You know from long and bitter experience that most girls do not choose this life as their first option. It is a port of last resort in a storm. They come to it out of dire necessity, out of sheer desperation, or out of a complete and utter lack of alternatives. Some are recent widows with children to feed and no means of support. Some have been abandoned by husbands or lovers, left destitute and disgraced. Some are running from abusive fathers or brutish husbands, seeking any sanctuary they can find. And some, tragically, were introduced to the trade by their own mothers or sisters who were already in it, the life passed down like a grim inheritance. Have you ever truly considered the brutal simplicity of the choices a woman faced back then? In the harsh, unforgiving reality of the American frontier, a woman alone had so few paths to follow. She could marry, trading her independence for the protection and provision of a husband. If she was educated enough, she could perhaps teach school, a respectable but lonely and poorly paid profession. She could work as a maid or a laundress, performing backbreaking labor for pitifully low wages. Or, she could enter the sporting life. For a woman with no family, no connections, and no money, the choice often wasn't much of a choice at all. An hour later, Emily Mitchell sits across from you at one of the small saloon tables. She is transformed. The travel-stained dress has been replaced by a borrowed one of Lucy's, which is a bit too large for her slight frame but is at least clean. She has eaten a full bowl of your hearty stew and nearly half a loaf of bread, eating with the quiet urgency of someone who hasn't seen a proper meal in days. A little bit of color has returned to her pale cheeks. So, you begin, pouring her a cup of strong, black coffee from the pot Thomas has just brought over. Tell me what brings you to my door. Her story spills out, at first in fits and starts, then in a steadier, sadder stream. She was a governess for a wealthy family in San Francisco. A good position. But the master of the house, a powerful and respected man, had made unwelcome advances. When she firmly rejected him, his pride was wounded. To protect himself and punish her, he accused her of stealing a silver hairbrush from his wife. His wife, naturally, believed her husband over the hired help. Emily, terrified of being arrested and publicly shamed, fled before the police could be called, taking only what she could carry and the small amount of money she had managed to save. I tried to find proper work, she says, her gaze fixed on the dark surface of her coffee cup. I tried everywhere. But without references. Her voice trails off. You nod slowly. You don't need her to finish the sentence. It is a common enough tale, a story you have heard in countless variations. Society offered women so few protections, and even fewer second chances. Have you ever done this kind of work before, you ask, your tone direct and businesslike. There is no point in dancing around the subject. She shakes her head, a deep blush rising from her neck to her cheeks. No, ma'am. Then why come here? This isn't an ordinary boarding house, Emily. For the first time, Emily raises her eyes and meets your gaze directly. And in their depths, you see something beyond mere desperation. You see a flicker of steel, of resolve. Determination. Because I heard you run a clean place, she says, her voice steady now. That you treat your employees fairly. And because, she adds, with brutal honesty, I have nowhere else to go. You consider her for a long moment, studying the young woman before you. Taking on a completely inexperienced girl, a novice, is a risk. It means time spent on training, potential awkwardness with the first few customers, and the possibility of drama when the full reality of the work finally sets in. But there is something about her steady gaze, her refusal to crumble despite her circumstances, that intrigues you. You see a survivor. We'll try it for a week, you decide finally. You'll start by helping Lucy with the cleaning and by serving drinks in the saloon. If that goes well, we'll discuss the rest. Lucy will show you the ropes. You lay out the terms clearly. You'll get room and board, plus 10% of any money you make from drink commissions. After the first month, if you're still here and working out, that goes up to 20%. It is a fair offer, much better than many madams would make to a newcomer. But it is still, you know, heavily weighted in your favor. This is a business, after all, not a charity. Emily nods, and a wave of pure, unadulterated relief washes over her features, making her look younger still. "Thank you," she breathes. "Thank you. I won't disappoint you." "See that you don't," you reply, your voice firm once more as you rise from the table. Lucy will show you where you'll be sleeping. As a new chapter begins for Emily, you are already turning your mind to the next item on your endless list of tasks, the machine of your enterprise grinding ever forward. As Lucy leads the young, determined Emily upstairs to show her to her small room, a new world of both peril and possibility opening before her, Thomas approaches your desk. He moves with his usual quiet efficiency, placing a small, folded piece of paper before you. "Message came while you were talking," he says simply, before returning to his work at the bar. You pick it up. The paper itself is of a surprisingly fine quality, thick and creamy to the touch, a stark contrast to the cheap newsprint and rough stationery that is the norm in this town. The note is brief, written in a flowing, elegant script that you immediately recognize. It is from Madame Rosalie, the proprietress of the most expensive and exclusive brothel in town, an establishment that caters to the wealthiest miners, bankers, and visiting dignitaries. She is summoning you, along with the town's other madams, to a meeting at her place this evening. This is highly unusual. But, given the grim news about Lily, it is not entirely unexpected. In the face of a shared threat, even the fiercest of competitors can see the wisdom in a temporary truce. Isn't it fascinating how that works? In any given town in the West, the madams were locked in a state of constant, often ruthless, competition. They vied for the prettiest girls, the wealthiest customers, and the most prestigious reputations. And yet, beneath this surface-level rivalry, there often existed a fragile, unwritten alliance, a sort of trade guild for the purveyors of vice. They understood, with the clear-eyed pragmatism of fellow survivors, that there were times when cooperation was essential. They would unofficially agree on a baseline for their prices, a necessary measure to prevent a ruinous price war that would only devalue their services. They would share information, warning each other about particularly violent or dangerous customers, creating an informal blacklist that could very well save a girl's life. Sometimes, they even pooled their resources to share the considerable cost of bribing city officials or hiring extra protection when trouble was brewing. Like any group of business leaders, they recognized that some forms of cooperation benefited everyone's bottom line. There's a famous story from Denver that perfectly illustrates this. The city council, in a fit of moral righteousness, once passed an ordinance requiring all known prostitutes to wear a conspicuous yellow ribbon, a public badge of their shame. But the madams of the city, Mattie Silks, Jenny Rogers, and all the others, refused to be shamed. In a brilliant act of coordinated defiance, they turned the law on its head. They didn't just have their girls wear yellow ribbons, they had them dress entirely in yellow, from head to toe. They wore magnificent gowns of yellow silk and satin, with matching hats, gloves, and parasols. They created such a stunning, beautiful, and audacious spectacle that they completely thwarted the council's intent. The men of the town were delighted by the display, and the city fathers, utterly humiliated, were eventually forced to rescind the order. That was the power of their alliance. The day progresses with its usual rhythm of tasks. You review your liquor supplies with Thomas, you settle a minor, but heated, dispute between Mary and Beth over a borrowed hairpin that had somehow escalated into accusations of a stolen customer. As evening approaches, you retreat to your own room to perform your daily transformation. The practical, hard-working businesswoman of the day is put away, and the worldly, sophisticated Madame Catherine emerges. Tonight, for the meeting, you choose a gown of deep burgundy satin. It's several years out of fashion, but the fabric is still rich, and the color projects an air of gravitas and elegance. A simple gold locket, a gift from a long-forgotten customer who had more money than sense, hangs at your throat. Your hair, with its telling threads of gray, is pinned up in a style that suggests sophistication without a desperate attempt at youth. As you dress, you feel the persona settle over you like a familiar cloak. It is a performance, as much as it is a profession. The night air is cool and clean as you step outside, a welcome relief from the thick, smoky atmosphere of your own saloon. You walk towards the north end of town, where Madame Rosalie's establishment sits. It is a large, two-story house, immaculately painted white with handsome green shutters. It is designed to look like the respectable residence of a wealthy merchant. Only the small, discreetly hung red lantern by the front door indicates its true purpose. You are admitted by a stern-faced doorman dressed in a butler's uniform, who leads you not into the main parlor where customers are entertained, but to a private study at the back of the house. The room is a world away from your own establishment. It is elegantly furnished with plush velvet couches, genuine oriental rugs, and oil paintings in heavy, gilt frames. On a polished sideboard, crystal decanters of expensive liquor sit alongside delicate, long-stemmed glasses. 3 other women are already present. Madame Rosalie herself, a formidable woman in her 40s who claims to be French, a claim no one has ever been able to verify, is dressed in midnight blue silk. Harriet Brown, a quiet, observant woman who runs a small, clean place catering exclusively to the town's growing Chinese population, is also there. And finally, Sarah Jenkins, whose brothel sits on the opposite end of town from yours and serves mainly the rowdy cowboys and cattlemen who pass through on the long cattle drives. Greetings are exchanged with a formal, almost stiff, politeness. Drinks are poured. Only when everyone is settled does Madame Rosalie address the reason for this rare gathering. "I assume you've all heard about Lily," she says, her carefully cultivated French accent thickening slightly, as it always does when she is genuinely concerned. Everyone nods. In a town this small, news, especially news of that nature, travels faster than a prairie fire. "The sheriff has no suspects," Sarah Jenkins adds, her voice practical and direct. "I spoke with him this afternoon. We need to take precautions," Madame Rosalie continues, her fingers tracing the rim of her crystal glass. "Hire extra security. Perhaps close an hour earlier for a while. And raise our prices to cover the extra expense," Harriet Brown suggests, her eyes sharp and businesslike. The discussion continues in this vein for some time, practical considerations, business decisions, a conversation that could be taking place among any group of merchants facing a common threat. No one speaks the fear that underlies every word, the chilling realization that what happened to Lily could just as easily happen to any one of them. They exist in a precarious world, operating outside the law's protection while being subject to its penalties, essential to the town's economy yet scorned by its polite society. The meeting concludes with a firm agreement on new security measures and a pact to share any and all information regarding suspicious newcomers or threatening customers. As you prepare to leave, however, Madame Rosalie gently draws you aside, guiding you to a quiet corner of the room. "Catherine, a word," she says, her voice low. "What is it?" you ask, noting the genuine alarm in her eyes. She leans closer. "I heard a rumor," she whispers, "that Lily, she had been keeping a book. A ledger. With names, dates, special requests from her most prominent clients. The sort of information that could ruin a man's reputation, his marriage, his entire life." You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the evening air. It is a cold, creeping dread that settles deep in your bones. You think that's why she was killed. Madame Rosalie gives a slight, elegant shrug, a gesture that is both Gallic and deeply unsettling. "I think," she says, her eyes meeting yours with a grave intensity, "that it would be wise for all of us to be very, very careful about what we know, and who knows that we know it." The warning hangs in the air, heavy and menacing, as you make your way back through the quiet, moonlit streets to your own establishment. The world suddenly feels like a much more dangerous place. Secrets, you know, can be as valuable as currency. Jenny Rogers once famously blackmailed a local politician, threatening to expose his frequent visits to her house, and earned herself $17,000 in the process, an absolute fortune at the time. But this new information suggests that secrets can be more than just profitable. They can be a death warrant. You return to your saloon, the weight of Madame Rosalie's words settling upon you like a funeral shroud. The familiar sights and sounds of your establishment, which usually bring you a sense of comfort and control, now seem fragile, almost illusory. The boisterous laughter of the miners, the lively, slightly off-key melody from the piano, the clinking of whiskey glasses, it all feels like a thin veneer stretched over a deep and dangerous chasm. The knowledge of Lily's secret book, and the murderous implications it carries, has changed the very air you breathe. Every shadow in the room seems a little deeper, every unfamiliar face a potential threat. Your eyes, now sharpened by a new sense of peril, scan the room and eventually land on Emily. It is her first true night working the floor, her initiation into the intricate dance of this life. You watch her carefully, a silent, unseen observer. She moves with a nervousness that is visible only to your experienced eye, a slight rigidity in her posture, a quickness in her movements. But she is also determined. She laughs at the customers' crude jokes, her smile a little too bright, a little too fixed. You notice how she accepts the drinks that are bought for her, but barely sips from the glass, a smart girl already learning the art of feigned indulgence. She allows the clumsy, half-drunk men to lead her in shuffling dances to the piano's music, her grace a stark contrast to their lurching movements. She is learning. Around 9 o'clock, you observe her in a quiet, intense conversation with a middle-aged man. He is dressed in the respectable but slightly frayed clothes of a store clerk or a minor businessman. He is not handsome, but he appears clean and, most importantly, sober. He is, you decide, a reasonable first customer, unlikely to cause trouble, unlikely to be cruel. After a few more minutes of hushed conversation, they both glance in your direction, seeking your silent permission. You give a slight, almost imperceptible nod of your head. Emily rises, and with a practiced poise that belies her inexperience, she leads him towards the stairs. This is how the transactions were conducted in the better establishments. There was no crude bargaining, no explicit discussion of prices or services in the public areas of the saloon. It was all about maintaining the illusion of choice, of romance, of gentility. The girls knew the standard prices for different activities, and the regular customers knew them as well. The madam's approval, a silent nod across a crowded room, was the final seal on the unspoken contract, the signal that maintained order and separated the parlor houses from the cheap, desperate, cribs down by the river. Emily returns downstairs about 45 minutes later. Her expression is perfectly neutral as she makes her way to your small desk where you keep the night's accounts. She places several folded bills into your hand. You count them swiftly, note the amount in your ledger, and then return a small portion to her, her percentage, as you had agreed. "Everything all right?" you ask quietly, your eyes not leaving the ledger. She nods, and a small smile touches her lips, though it doesn't quite reach the newfound weariness in her eyes. "Fine," she says softly. He was polite. "Good," you reply. "Take a short break if you need it." Then back to the floor. The night progresses, and the looming sense of dread begins to recede, pushed back by the sheer momentum of a busy, profitable evening. The saloon is filled with the roar of voices and laughter. The piano player, fueled by a few glasses of whiskey, is now pounding out lively, popular tunes with rare enthusiasm. Even Rose, it seems, has managed to recover from her earlier heartbreak, her bright, genuine laughter ringing out as she entertains a group of cowboys fresh off a long cattle drive. The business is running smoothly. The machine is working. You allow yourself to relax, just a fraction, thinking that perhaps your fears were unfounded, a product of a stressful day and Madame Rosalie's flair for the dramatic. And that is when the front door bangs open with such force that it slams against the interior wall, causing the bottles behind the bar to rattle ominously. The piano music stutters and dies. Conversations halt mid-sentence. In an instant, a wave of silence washes over the entire room. Every head turns towards the entrance. 3 men stand there, framed by the dark night outside. They are dusty and trail-worn, their clothes stiff with grime. They have the hard, pitiless eyes of men who have seen too much and cared too little. Their hands hover unnervingly close to the pistols holstered at their hips. You recognize them immediately. They are the companions of the scarred man from the night before, the one who caused the trouble at Lily's place. The leader, a tall man with a week's growth of beard and a jagged scar that runs along his jawline, scans the room. His gaze is not that of a man looking for pleasure. It is the cold, calculating gaze of a predator searching for weakness, for a place to unleash the trouble he carries inside him. You move towards them, your own expression a carefully constructed mask of pleasant neutrality. "Gentlemen," you greet them, deliberately positioning yourself so that Thomas, behind the bar, has a clear view of the unfolding situation. New customers are always welcome. Welcome to the Silver Star. What can we offer you this evening? The scarred man's eyes assess you, a flicker of cold amusement in their depths that makes your spine stiffen. "Whiskey," he says, his voice a low growl. "And girls. We've been on the trail for 2 weeks." "Of course," you reply, your voice smooth as silk. Thomas will be happy to serve you drinks. The girls will join you as soon as they are available. It is a subtle dismissal, a way of telling him that your women are not simply at his beck and call. They are currently occupied with other, paying customers, a fact the newcomers clearly note with rising dissatisfaction. The only girls presently unaccompanied are Sarah, one of your more seasoned women, and Emily, who is trying to make herself inconspicuous over by the piano. The men take a table, their movements heavy and aggressive, and order a bottle of your cheapest whiskey. They drink it quickly, straight from the bottle, their loud, crude conversation and bursts of harsh laughter creating a ripple of tension in the previously relaxed atmosphere. When Sarah approaches their table, offering her company, the scarred leader yanks her roughly onto his lap. She maintains her professional smile, but you can see the flicker of discomfort in her eyes. "What's your name, girl?" the man demands, his voice carrying across the now quieter room. "Sarah," she replies, trying to shift into a more comfortable position. "Sarah," he repeats, taking another long swig of whiskey. "You look like a girl I knew in Abilene. She wasn't friendly enough. I hope you're friendlier." The implied threat hangs in the air, thick and ugly. In a skilled attempt to de-escalate, to move the potential for trouble upstairs and away from the public space, Sarah stands and offers the man her hand. "Why don't I show you just how friendly I can be?" For a moment, it seems to work. The man grins and starts to rise. But then, his gaze falls upon Emily, who has frozen by the piano, her eyes wide with alarm. "Wait," he says, his voice dropping as he sits back down heavily in his chair. "I want that one. The new one." The scarred man's words, "I want that one. The new one," hang in the air like a death sentence. Emily freezes by the piano, a statue carved from fear, her eyes darting to you in a silent, desperate plea for rescue. In this moment, every other sound in the world seems to have ceased. The piano is silent. The nervous chatter is gone. All that remains is the suffocating tension and the thudding of your own heart against your ribs. Without a moment's hesitation, you move. Your movements are not rushed or panicked, but smooth and deliberate, a fluid motion that inserts your own body directly between Emily and the scarred man's predatory line of sight. You become a physical barrier, a shield of burgundy satin and sheer force of will. "I'm afraid Miss Emily is not available at the moment," you say, your voice a calm, level river flowing over the jagged rocks of the room's tension. You offer a polite, almost apologetic smile. "She's promised to another customer, you see. A regular. He's just stepped out for a moment." It is a lie, of course, a quick fabrication designed to de-escalate, to save face for everyone involved. "But Sarah here," you add, gesturing to the other girl who is now standing tensely nearby, "is one of our most popular and experienced women. You would be very fortunate indeed to have her company this evening. For a heartbeat, you think it might work." But the man's eyes, cold and hard as river stones, narrow into slits. His gaze dismisses Sarah as if she were a piece of furniture. His hand, which had been hovering near his pistol, now moves to rest deliberately on the worn leather grip of the gun at his hip. It is not an overt threat, not yet, but it is an unmistakable signal of intent. "I said," he repeats, his voice dangerously quiet now, all bluster gone, replaced by something much more menacing, "I want that one." The atmosphere in the room, already thick with tension, now becomes utterly suffocating. The few remaining regular customers, who had been trying to mind their own business, now begin to actively edge towards the exits, melting into the shadows. The piano player has stopped mid-song, his hands frozen above the keys. And Thomas, your ever-reliable bartender, has moved even closer, his hand disappearing beneath the bar where you know, with absolute certainty, he keeps a loaded, double-barreled shotgun. These are the moments. The crucibles. The instances that separate the successful madams from the failures, the survivors from the victims. How you handle a difficult, potentially violent customer determines everything. It defines the reputation of your establishment. It sends a message to every man in this town about whether your house is seen as a safe, orderly place of business, or a chaotic, dangerous den where anything goes. The legendary madams, you recall, each had their own way. The fiery Maddie Silks was known for personally ejecting troublemakers, sometimes at the point of her own Derringer pistol. The elegant Jenny Rogers, on the other hand, employed professional bouncers, large, intimidating men whose very presence was usually enough to handle problems before they could escalate. You don't have bouncers. You have Thomas, his shotgun, and your own hard-won reputation for running a place where your girls are not to be mistreated. Not by anyone. Not even by paying customers. Have you ever been in a situation where backing down felt like a betrayal of everything you stood for? This is one of those moments for you. You take a slow, calming breath, and you stand your ground. Sir, you say, and now the silkiness is gone from your voice, replaced by a thread of pure, unyielding steel. In my establishment, the girls choose their customers just as much as the customers choose them. It is a radical declaration, a statement of profound agency for women who, in the eyes of the world, have none. It is your fundamental rule, the line that cannot be crossed. If you cannot accept that, you continue, your eyes locked with his. I'm sure there are other places in this town that might better suit your particular needs. The man stands up slowly, his hand still resting on his gun. His two companions rise with him, forming a loose, threatening semicircle behind him. They are a united front of intimidation. Are you refusing to serve us? He asks, his voice a low, menacing hiss. I'm suggesting, you reply, your own voice never wavering, that your direct approach might be better received elsewhere. You don't back down. You can feel the fear, a cold knot in your stomach, but you refuse to let it show. You push the gamble further. The Broken Spoke, down at the edge of town, has girls who might appreciate your style more. It is a calculated, perilous risk. You are directing this pack of wolves to your lowest-end competitor, a place with a reputation for desperation. Either they will leave peacefully, seeking out what they perceive as easier prey, or the violence you have been trying to stave off will erupt right here, right now. For a long, agonizing moment, no one moves. The world seems to hold its breath. You can hear the loud, frantic tick of the clock behind the bar. You can hear the faint creak of the floorboards as one of the remaining customers finally slips out the door. And you can hear the pounding of your own blood in your ears, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. Then, the scarred man does something unexpected. He laughs. The sound is as sharp and cold as breaking ice, utterly devoid of humor. Fine, he says, contemptuously tossing a few coins onto the table to cover the whiskey. Keep your fancy, timid girls. Come on, boys. Let's find somewhere a little more welcoming. And just like that, they are gone. They file out the door, their threatening presence dissolving back into the night from which it came. As the door swings shut behind them, the entire room seems to collectively exhale a great, shuddering sigh of relief. You see Thomas's hand re-emerge from beneath the bar, empty. The tension in your shoulders, which had been coiled as tight as a watch spring, begins to ease. "Thank you," a quiet voice says from behind you. You turn to find Emily. Her face is pale as a ghost, but she is composed, her back straight. You manage a small, weary shrug, a gesture that belies the adrenaline still coursing through your veins. "Part of the job," you reply, your voice a little rough. "We take care of our own here." And it was true. That was the unspoken creed. Despite the cutthroat competition, despite the harsh economic realities that sometimes forced a madam to make difficult choices, the better brothels, the ones that lasted, operated as self-contained communities. The women looked out for each other. They shared resources, they celebrated small successes, and they mourned their losses together. Mattie Silks was known for personally nursing sick girls back to health, rather than simply casting them out and replacing them. Jenny Rogers was said to have loaned money to several of her former employees to help them establish their own legitimate businesses. And Fanny Porter, a famous Texas madam, maintained relationships with her girls long after they had left her house, often helping them find husbands or respectable positions. In a world that offered women so few protections, they had learned, out of sheer necessity, to create their own. The moment the front door swings shut, cutting off the chilling laughter of the scarred man, the silence he leaves behind is just as terrifying. For a heartbeat, no one moves, no one speaks. The entire saloon is frozen in a tableau of shared fear and disbelief. Then, as if a spell has been broken, the room seems to sag, to release a collective breath it didn't know it was holding. Thomas slowly, deliberately, places the heavy shotgun back in its hiding place beneath the bar. The girls, who had been huddled together like a flock of frightened sparrows near the piano, begin to stir, their faces pale in the flickering lamplight. You yourself feel a tremor run through your hands, the delayed reaction of your body to the adrenaline and terror of the last few minutes. You clench them into fists, willing them to be still. Just as you are about to speak, to try and restore some semblance of normalcy, the back door of the saloon swings open. You spin around, your heart leaping into your throat, thinking the men have returned. But it is not them. It is Sheriff Mills, his hand resting casually on his holstered gun, with two of his deputies flanking him. He strides into the room, his presence filling the space with an entirely different kind of authority. "Evening, Catherine," he says, his voice deceptively mild, though his eyes miss nothing. They sweep across the near-empty room, noting the frightened faces of your girls and your own tense posture. "Heard there might be a bit of a commotion brewing down here. Thought I'd stop by." The relief that washes over you is so profound it almost makes your knees weak. "Sheriff," you say, your voice a little hoarse but steady. "Your timing, as always, is impeccable." He gives a slight shrug, a gesture that dismisses any notion of coincidence. "Just doing my job. Figured those boys might come calling after what happened to their friend." A man's pride, when wounded, can be a dangerous thing. He looks around the saloon again. "Might be wise to close up early tonight, Catherine. Let things cool down." You nod immediately, the financial loss of a few hours of business paling in comparison to the potential danger of remaining open. "I think you're right." After the sheriff and his deputies have gone, a new kind of quiet settles over the saloon. It is not the tense, waiting silence of before, but the subdued, shaken quiet of a shared trauma. You lock the front and back doors yourself, sliding the heavy bolts into place. The sound is loud and final in the stillness. Tonight, no one is leaving. The thought of those men still out there, drunk and angry, somewhere in the dark streets of the town, is more than enough to justify the precaution. "All right," you announce to the room. "We're closed for the night. We'll all stay here. It's safer." No one complains. The girls, still shaken, begin to help you clean up, their usual chatter and good-natured bickering replaced by a quiet, purposeful industry. They collect glasses, wipe down tables, and help you arrange blankets and spare cushions from the back rooms onto the tables and floor, creating makeshift beds. In this moment, the saloon is transformed from a place of business into a fortress, a sanctuary. They are not just your employees, they are your charges, and tonight, you are their protector. As you work, Emily approaches you, her movements hesitant. Is this normal?" she asks, her voice so soft you can barely hear it. "This kind of danger?" You pause, considering how to answer her. How do you explain the unexplainable reality of this life without frightening her away completely? "Not every day," you say finally, your voice gentle. "But it's not uncommon, either. This business, it attracts a certain kind of man. Some are just lonely souls looking for a bit of company. Others," you add, your gaze growing distant, "others bring their troubles and their demons with them. You learn to spot the difference. And you learn that you are not alone in here. We look out for each other." The night passes fitfully. You do not sleep, instead taking up a watch in a chair by the locked door while Thomas rests. As gray morning light finally filters through the grimy windows, a sense of exhaustion hangs over the room. It is mid-morning when another knock comes, this time at the back door. It is a young deputy, the same one from before, his face clean-shaven and serious. He brings news. "Morning, ma'am," he says, holding his hat in his hands. "Sheriff sent me. It's about that fella from last night. The one with the scar." "What about him?" you ask, your stomach tightening. The deputy shifts his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "He's dead, ma'am. Happened over at the Broken Spoke, late last night. One of Bessie's girls. Says he got rough with her, wouldn't take no for an answer. She stabbed him with a little knife she kept hidden. Claims it was self-defense." The news lands in the quiet room with the force of a physical blow. The scarred man is dead. He was killed at the very place you sent him. A wave of complex emotions washes over you. There is a chilling, undeniable relief. The immediate threat to you and your girls is gone, permanently. But there is also a profound, sickening sense of, what if? What if he hadn't left your saloon? What if he had forced a confrontation here? The knife could have been meant for Emily, or Sarah, or you. The body could be lying on your floor right now. Have you ever considered the strange workings of justice on the frontier? It was a rough, often brutal calculus, where some lives were deemed more valuable than others. Will there be a trial, you ask, though you suspect you already know the answer. The deputy shakes his head. Doubtful. Nobody's too broken up about a troublemaker from out of town getting what was coming to him. And Bessie, the madam over there, has already paid the fine for disturbance of the peace. And there it is. A man is dead, but he was the wrong kind of man. He was killed by a prostitute, the wrong kind of woman. So his death is settled not with a judge and a jury, but with a simple fine paid by a rival madam to sweep the whole ugly business under the rug. The crisis is over. The storm has passed. But its aftermath, the cold, hard knowledge of how close you came to disaster and the arbitrary nature of the world you inhabit, will linger for a very long time. The day after the scarred man's death is a quiet one. A strange, almost unnatural calm settles over your establishment, and indeed, over the entire town. The threat has passed, the tension has broken, and all that is left is the quiet rhythm of ordinary life resuming its course. After the previous night's lockdown, you gave all the girls the day to rest and recover, and you took the opportunity to do the same, falling into a deep, dreamless sleep that lasted until late afternoon. When you finally wake, the fear and tension of the past few days have receded, replaced by your usual pragmatic focus on the business at hand. You wash thoroughly, taking your time, enjoying the simple luxury of water that has been heated on the stove, a small comfort that feels monumental after the turmoil. As you dress for the evening, choosing a gown of deep purple silk, one of your finest, you find your thoughts turning inward, contemplating the events of the past few days with a new and unsettling clarity. The confrontation with the scarred man and his companions served as a stark, brutal reminder of the precarious ledge upon which you have built your entire life. For all your business acumen, for all the money you have so carefully saved and invested, you remain utterly vulnerable. You are a woman alone, running an enterprise that exists entirely at the pleasure of men who could, on a whim, shut it down or destroy it completely. The same sheriff who protected you just 2 nights ago could just as easily be leading a raid on your saloon next week if public sentiment, spurred by a new preacher or a politician's wife, suddenly turned against businesses like yours. This was the fundamental, inescapable reality for all madams, even the most legendary and successful among them. They operated within a narrow, shifting space between grudging tolerance and outright condemnation, always acutely aware that their fortunes could change with the next election, the next moral crusade, or the next downturn in the town's economy. Many of them tried to secure their position, to buy a measure of respectability, through conspicuous acts of charity and community involvement. You've heard the stories. Maddie Silks was known for buying clothes and school supplies for the poor children of Denver. Jenny Rogers contributed generously to civic improvement projects. Even Squirrel Tooth Alice, a Texas madam known for her distinctive dental features, was a regular donor to her local church, though she herself was never welcome to attend the services. Their money was always welcome, the women themselves, however, were not. As you pin up your hair, arranging the gray-streaked strands into an elegant coif, you find yourself thinking, really thinking, about the future. How much longer can you continue this life? What comes after? Have you ever had a dream, a quiet, persistent little vision of a different life, one that you visit in your most tired or hopeful moments? For you, the dream has always been the same. A small, sturdy house somewhere quiet, somewhere far away from the dust and the desperation of the West. A place where the name, Madame Catherine, is unknown, where your past is a locked room and you have thrown away the key. You imagine a small garden, your hands in the cool, dark earth, coaxing vegetables and flowers from the soil. You imagine shelves filled with books you've never had the time to read. You imagine the simple, profound pleasure of anonymity, of a life lived without constant performance, without judgment. But you are a realist. You know that few madams ever managed a graceful retirement. The hazards of the profession were too numerous. Many succumbed to violence, to disease, or to the slow, creeping death of addiction to alcohol or laudanum. Others simply faded from prominence as they aged, their beauty and youth, the very commodities they traded in, inevitably declining, making them less appealing to customers who always craved the new and the fresh. For every success story, there were 100 tragedies. Maddie Silks was one of the rare exceptions. After years of running some of the most successful brothels in Denver, she finally married a wealthy cattle dealer and lived out the rest of her days in a state of relative, hard-won respectability. She was the dream, the blueprint for a successful exit. But then there was Jenny Rogers, who for all her wealth and influence, struggled with debilitating health problems in her later years, her grand empire unable to shield her from the physical toll the life had taken. And poor Pearl DeVere, who died of a morphine overdose after one of her own lavish parties, a victim of the very excess she cultivated. You assess your own situation with a cool, dispassionate eye. Your own savings, that secret stash of money carefully accumulated and quietly invested over the long years, might just be enough. It might be enough for that modest retirement, for that small house and the garden and the books. You have not been as reckless as Pearl, nor perhaps as spectacularly successful as Maddie. You have simply been careful. You have been a survivor. The dream feels possible, tangible even. But not yet. Not quite yet. First, there is tonight's business to attend to. There are tomorrow's supplies to order, and next week's accounts to balance. There is the daily, relentless work of survival and success that has defined your life for so long, a rhythm you are not quite ready to abandon. With a final, settling breath, you rise. The transformation is complete. You are no longer the tired, reflective woman dreaming of a garden, you are Madame Catherine, proprietress of the Silver Star Saloon. You descend the stairs to find your small world already coming back to life. Thomas has the bar stocked and ready. The piano player is warming up with a series of gentle scales and simple tunes. And your girls, rested and restored after their day off, are in good spirits, their laughter once again filling the room as they prepare for the evening ahead. The cycle begins anew. The evening unfolds with a comforting, predictable rhythm. The memory of the confrontation and the fear it spawned begins to fade, replaced by the familiar cadence of a profitable night. Your regular customers have returned, their presence a quiet vote of confidence, and new visitors arrive as well, drawn in from the dark street by the warm glow of the lamps, the sound of the piano, and the universal promise of female company after a long day of labor or travel. You move through the room, a graceful, watchful presence, the quiet center of this bustling universe. You greet customers by name, ensure drinks are served promptly, and with a subtle glance or a quiet word, you mediate the occasional minor dispute before it can fester. This is the endless, repeating cycle of your life's work. Your eyes often drift to Emily. She is a different woman from the terrified, destitute creature who appeared at your door just a few days ago. She moves among the customers with a growing confidence, her laughter sounding more genuine, her smiles less strained. She is a quick study, you think with a sense of approval, already mastering the unspoken rules and delicate expectations of the establishment. She has found her footing in this treacherous new world. In her resilience, you see a flicker of undeniable hope. She is a survivor. Later in the evening, you notice a potential problem brewing in a corner. Rose is sitting with a well-dressed stranger who is leaning too close, his hand gripping her arm with a force that is clearly unwelcome. You see the strained, fixed quality of her smile, a silent signal of distress that you are expertly attuned to. You rise smoothly and make your way toward the table. Good evening, you greet them, your tone perfectly pleasant but firm. Rose, my dear, I believe Mary needs your assistance for just a moment. It is a prearranged code, an excuse that allows any of your girls to extract themselves from an uncomfortable situation without causing a scene. Rose nods gratefully, pulling her arm from the man's grasp. If you'll excuse me, sir, she says with practiced politeness. The man frowns, about to protest, but you are already stepping in. She will return shortly, you assure him with a placating smile. In the meantime, please, enjoy a drink on the house. You signal to Thomas, who promptly delivers a generous whiskey, the universal solvent for wounded male pride. A small crisis, expertly averted. The cycle continues. As the night begins to wind down, your trusted Lucy approaches you, her expression intrigued. Catherine, she says, I have some interesting news. A new girl will be arriving on the stage tomorrow. Bessie, from the Broken Spoke, recommended her. You raise an eyebrow at this. Bessie? It's a rare and unexpected thing for a competitor, especially one who runs a place like the Broken Spoke, to send business your way. Why would she do that, you ask? Lucy shrugs. Apparently, the girl was asking around about finding a better, safer place to work after what happened with that scarred fellow. Bessie told her to try here. The words land with a quiet, profound impact. It is an unexpected compliment, a validation from the most unlikely of sources. It is an acknowledgement that what you have built here is different. It is safer. It is better. It is a small, but deeply meaningful, victory. The last of the customers have finally drifted home or retired upstairs with your girls for the remainder of the night. The saloon is quiet now, the air thick with the day's spent energy. As you are finishing your final calculations at your desk, Emily approaches. She places her earnings for the evening in your hand, a substantial amount that speaks to her success. A good night, you comment. She nods, a small, genuine smile finally reaching her eyes. Better than I expected, she admits. I'm not comfortable, exactly, she adds with a frankness you appreciate, but I'm managing. And it's better than starving, or scrubbing floors until my hands bleed. It is a pragmatic assessment, free of romantic illusions or self-pity. She sees her world with clear eyes. As she turns to go, she hesitates. Thank you, she says quietly, her voice full of an emotion that catches you off guard. For taking me in. For keeping us safe. For everything. In this business, genuine gratitude is a rare and precious coin. Most transactions are strictly commercial. The simple, heartfelt thanks from this young woman, in whom you see a faint echo of your own younger self, warms a part of your heart you thought had long grown cold. You're welcome, Emily, you reply, and you mean it. Finally, your own long day is done. You make your way upstairs to your small, private room, your body heavy with a familiar, bone-deep exhaustion. You remove your finery with slow, careful movements, the purple silk gown, the pearl earrings, the carefully constructed persona of Madame Catherine. In your simple cotton nightgown, with your face scrubbed clean of its powder and rouge, you are just a woman. The lines around your eyes and mouth tell the story of the thousands of nights just like this one, a story of managing, surviving, and building a business in a world that never wanted to acknowledge women like you as businesswomen at all. You settle onto your narrow bed, feeling the familiar lumps of the mattress beneath you. The sounds of the night drift in through your open window, a distant dog barking, the soft rustle of the wind through the cottonwood trees. These sounds are the soundtrack of your life, as familiar and as comforting as your own heartbeat. Your thoughts drift over the women of your profession, the countless madams whose names have been lost to history. Mattie Silks, Jenny Rogers, Pearl de Vere, Dora Dufresne. They, and you, were pioneers as much as any man who struck gold or drove cattle across the plains. You carved out empires of independence in a society that offered you none. Your breathing slows, deepening into a peaceful, regular rhythm. Your body grows heavy, sinking into the mattress, releasing the last of the day's tension with each long exhale. As you surrender to the gentle, pulling tide of sleep, you might wonder briefly about tomorrow, and all the tomorrows that will follow. Will you finally act on your dream of that quiet house, the garden, the books? Or will you continue on, managing your saloon, protecting your girls, and presiding over your small, chaotic kingdom? The question floats away, unanswered, as sleep finally claims you fully. Your breathing is deep and regular, your body is completely at rest, safe in this moment of perfect peace. You are drifting deeper and deeper into slumber, the quiet embrace of the night unfolding around you like a soft, dark blanket. The frontier town sleeps, and you, Madame Catherine, keeper of secrets, manager of desires, and architect of your own survival, you sleep too.